This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Yeah, I got nothing else other than, daylight savings time is stupid.
Yeah, that's
we
also...
just had that this weekend, and it's dumb. Also, like, the world is a flaming forest fire of dumpster fires, but we are not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the flaming dumpster fire that is Gawyn freaking Trakand.
He's making a new commitment because he's totally forsaking all of his old ones somehow.
The Forsaken would not let him join their ranks if he begged.
I don't know. He's just selfish enough.
I don't like him.
I mean, this chapter in particular has the most egregious examples of internal thoughts by Gawyn that just make me go, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like, this is someone who I thought I would like when he was introduced.
Yeah. He is just, I want to punch him. I want to punch him so hard. Like, I'm so mad at Bryne for not punching him, you know?
Right?
Like,
right? Like, or imprisoning him, or like taking him as a cat. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, oh, you can wander around my camp after you've like led the opposing forces and killed a bunch of my men, and or stabbed a bunch of men when you came into camp.
I mean, this is nobility privilege, is what this is.
Yeah, this is definitely that. Yes, this is a rich man getting away with stuff because he's rich.
Yeah, exactly.
And he knows
well, you're
people.
a prince, so I'm not going to treat you like a common person. Like, no, treat him like a common person. This is a shitbag. Look at him. Look at his shit-eating grin.
I'd say the only good parts of this chapter, oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying it like that, but the parts of the chapter I enjoyed was sort of seeing him observe the camp. I thought the observations of how the camp was laid out and the sprawl and the world building here in the front is pretty good, even though it's through Gawyn's eyes.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen all of that before, but it is nice to see it again. Like the way that the camp followers are a larger literal force than the army that it supports. That's cool. That's cool. Like real world building, and the larger thing. I wouldn't say I liked it about the chapter, but the larger theme for the 3 chapters that we're going to cover today is really about authority, like who can assume authority, who gives you authority, where it comes from, the confidence that goes with it, like who is mapping to where on that map of authority and who takes it. And what that means for the people around them. Gawyn is one example. Sheriam is another example. Aviendha is another example. Like Gawyn starts us out strong on that conversation. Yeah, Egwene, right? It's like he starts us out strong in terms of having that be a thing that we're thinking about. He's just taking all the wrong lessons from the conversation. So that's one thing I have to keep in mind, that, you know, Gawyn does give us some of that, because he's like, you know, taking some authority upon himself that he should not be with full confidence, and it is a problem.
Gawyn problem number 1. Complaining about sleeping in his cloak for 2 freaking nights. 2 nights.
No,
and he
poor baby.
Gawyn. And he's like all like snippy with Gareth Bryne because he hasn't had enough sleep and he's tired. And it's like, dude, how many other characters in this series have been on the road for weeks or months, sleeping rough for a long time? And yeah, don't get me wrong, they like a bath, but 2 freaking nights, come on. Even I've camped longer than that, and like, don't get me wrong,
I know,
you know,
right?
But like the irritable and crankiness, I'm just like, you should be able to rough it for longer than that. You live in a medieval world.
Yeah, precisely. And we should probably mention that this chapter is called Chapter 24, A New Commitment, and the symbol is the bull with the roses around its neck, which I believe is the Gareth Bryne symbol.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's the Gareth Bryne, the House of Bryne symbol. The garland of roses around his neck.
Right.
After Judy Garland.
Naturally.
Yeah. And I don't even want to do a read-in on this.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Okay, so yeah, then he uses that as an excuse, his tiredness, to snip at Gareth Bryne through the entire chapter. And it's just like, oh,
Oh, and he uses it as an excuse for getting into a fight that injures people.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I'm just tired, and that's why I picked a fight with 5 men and injured 4 of them, assuming that magic healers were just going to spring out of the woodwork. And Bryne's like, that's literally not how it works. Maybe check first before you give people injuries. You fucking, like, oh, just heal them. Like, what, sir, like, what privilege? Like, I'll just call my dad and he'll bail me out of prison. Like, it's fine. Like, not everyone has that.
Yeah, no, that is that. Oh, you can just get Aes Sedai healing, right? And we find out, Gareth Bryne's like, not really. Like, they don't really come into camp. I have to beg them to heal even the lightest wounds. They're kind of busy, right? Like, so we find out later in the chapter that, like, they don't even get the healing that he thinks they're going to get. They probably don't.
Yeah, because privilege. He's just so privileged. Like, he's like, I would literally rather pick a fight and like risk getting my horse shot by crossbow bolts than just go up the chain of command through the proper channels.
Oh, God, yeah. That was another thing that makes him just scummy. Oh, yeah, I'll just take shelter behind my horse because he can probably survive a few bolts. I can't.
Fuck you, dude.
Like, maybe just don't start a confrontation with your allies or the people you're trying to make your ally. Oh, how about this one? Here's another Gawyn. I'll save her somehow. Then I'll talk some sense into her.
Fuck you, sir.
When we know Egwene can get out at any time, she does not need rescuing. She is capable of having someone come get her with a gateway at any point.
Yeah. And what sense are you going to talk into her? She is steering the White Tower itself. 2 halves divided against each other. She is steering both of them.
One from inside,
and
one from
your
dreams.
Spoiled princeling ass thinks you're going to make her be more, quote unquote, rational than she already is managing all of these women. Like, you're so fucking misogynistic, like so patronizing.
When he might being the most irrational because he's trying to support compulsion in his head. You did say you saw some, you mentioned to me before the recording, you saw some evidence of compulsion in this chapter, or at least some possible evidence.
Yeah, there's a couple of lines that could fit into your theory. Like, he puts his hand to his head, suddenly feeling tired and going, wow, you're right, I've really been an idiot. But like, that's a perfectly normal human thing to do. That is not, like, people running high on emotion can have all that emotion drain away and suddenly they realize they're tired. That's a very normal thing. We don't need compulsion to explain that.
We don't need compulsion to explain it.
But we could have
use
compulsion to
explain it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few things where it's like, well, maybe, or like what's this other line? For the first time in months, his actions matched his heart, right? Like, that's, that struggle is being resolved, right? Also, people can have cognitive dissonance and do terrible things and then ultimately decide that those things were terrible and they needed to stop doing that because it was percolating for a long time. Also, a very normal human experience. You don't need compulsion for that. But as a treat, we can have it if we want. If you would like to headcanon that way, here is your evidence.
Here's another paragraph that kind of pissed me off. See if you can figure out what part of it. To reach the command post, he had to ride through the camp followers, who outnumbered the actual troops. Cooks to fix the food, women to serve the food, wagon drivers to carry the food, wheelwrights to fix the wagons, blacksmiths to make the horseshoes, merchants to buy the food, quartermasters to organize it. Boys, everything there is a job title, except for one. Mm-hmm. Women to serve the food and wash the soiled dishes.
That's what women can do.
That's all
they
women
can
can
cook
do.
and clean. There's never been a woman quartermaster or blacksmith or wheelwright. None of those things ever have been done by women in any part of human history.
Oh, it was just God. He did such a good job of writing Gawyn as just a real pig. I hope it was an accident. I hope it wasn't an accident. I hope it wasn't an accident.
Oh my God. And he even, like, at one point when he's headed in, he snaps at Sheriam, right? Like, he's going through the crowd and this woman gets in his way and he, like, snaps at her. He's like, oh, my mother would be so ashamed of me being mean to the common people. But my mommy's dead, so I can be mean to the common people if I want. And it's just like, oh my God, dude. You're just going to snap at a woman and then be like, I have the right because I think that my mom was murdered? Like, this random woman has nothing to do with that. You need to be nice. You suck.
No, because women are treated badly, I can treat women badly. Don't you see how that works?
I know I said he had class consciousness last time, but, like, This time, he's really trying me.
And I think that's one of the things that really bugs me about Gawyn is how inconsistent he is with his, like, being good to people.
Yeah, he's very transactional. He's very fucking transactional. Again, privileged fucking takes.
And of course, that woman who stumbles in front of him is Sheriam. An S name.
An S-I Sedai. One of the
yes.
S-I Sedai, yes.
This is the one who we saw demoted by Elaida. You know, she was an ally of Elaida. Elaida demoted her to accepted, which she, or novice, right? Novice or accepted?
Accepted.
I thought it was accepted, which she accepted, which was a problem. The demotion. And then she's basically trying to find her way as a working woman out in the world and is no longer considers herself Aes Sedai, even though nothing has changed about her whatsoever.
Yeah, that's the wild thing, is that Elaida assumed the authority to take away her Aes Sedai ship without doing anything magical, and Sheriam has accepted that so completely that even the three oaths don't stop her from saying she's not Aes Sedai.
Right, which is crazy. It's crazy. That's kind of the only way you can not be Aes Sedai, is if you can believe that you're not, despite everything she's gone through.
And like Swan and Egwene have made the argument that the three oaths are part of what makes Aes Sedai. She explicitly didn't have the oaths removed, which, like, honestly, Elaida, if you were actually going to demote someone, that would involve stripping them of the oaths, I would think. In order to actually, you can't just wave your hands and then leave them bound to the three oaths. That's wholly inappropriate. So, like, what the fuck is even happening? It's so silly, but, you know, these are the mental pretzels.
Of fascism.
I mean, the part where Sheriam is a test case to see how far illegal use of power can be used. I mean, we are recording this, the day after Mahmoud Khalil got just nabbed from his dorm room, just completely fucking disappeared. Like, we're still in the throes of that being a thing. I don't know how much anyone here has followed that, but, like, it's very much on my mind.
It's the first time hearing of it.
Yeah, it's a guy he's a permanent resident on a green card, and agents showed up saying, we don't give a good goddamn about all of your paperwork because you were leading pro-Palestinian protests last year, and we are going to disappear you and deport you for being against our nation's aims. It's a developing thing. He's currently being held in Louisiana, last I heard. It's a test case. It is a clear-cut test case of, can we disappear people illegally? Can we get away with that? Like, Sheriam as a test case for, can you do, I mean, it says so in the chapter where we actually see her, like, this was a test case for Elaida to use against her real enemies. This is happening in real life right now as we are recording this. There is a test case for, can we disappear people because we don't like their politics?
Mm-hmm. And this is Gawyn stumbling upon someone who has disappeared.
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is the test case. She hasn't really been disappeared so much as demoted, but, like, a test case for illegal use of power that, like, if you accept it, then it's real. And obviously in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, like, it's less about him accepting it and more about the rest of us accepting it.
Right.
You know, like, this is a test of us as a society, but when it comes to the Aes Sedai, it is a test of your mental fortitude, which is really what we see in the Avienda chapter, right? With the whole, like, what a wise one is someone who asserts her own power regardless of what others say. Again, proving that the Aiel, however problematic, are in many ways pretty freaking admirable for Randland cultures.
Yes, but that does lead to dangers like Savannah. They point that out, right? Like, it is possible to have an issue where someone can just declare, I have power, and if you don't have the social norms in place to stop them, they can just take that power.
Yeah, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Their system is still better than everyone else's.
What if I don't want the baby?
Then you should not have had one in the bath in the first place.
No, you know, I know we try not to talk too much about Trump and modern day politics, but it is this idea that, like, history repeats itself. And so Jordan's writing this based on historical things that have happened in the past, and we're seeing them repeat in the present. And it's why I think it feels so apt, because grabs for power and fascism kind of always occur in a very similar pattern. And when one's written as accurately as Jordan has written that grab for power across multiple different cultures in multiple different ways, of course we're going to find comparisons between a modern day power grab, and multiple ones written in these books.
No, that's the thing, is that these fascist fuckheads have exactly one playbook. And no matter which part of history you study or which piece of fiction riffing off of which piece of history you study, it comes down to the same playbook every freaking time.
It's like when you play the fighting game against your little brother and he just has the one move that he mashes over and over and over again, but it's still incredibly effective, and it's really infuriating when he starts winning games and no one can figure out how to stop him until that one person who's really talented comes in and, you know, drops a nuke on his ass. Anyway. So back to Gawyn fighting these four guys and, you know, knocking one out by hitting him on the head, which of course, you know, he's fine, just a little bit of brain damage, as we know.
Fantasy concussion.
Right. Fantasy concussion. They don't actually exist. And then 2 leg wounds for people in their aortas, not aortas, that's in the heart, femoral artery. Yeah, I'm sure they're fine, just bleeding out on the ground.
Also, then Gawyn is like, a lone blade master conquered 4 men in 10 heartbeats. And I'm like, was it 10 heartbeats, sir? I feel like your heart would be beating pretty fast at this point. I really doubt the 10 heartbeats. Just small quibble, but I don't believe it.
Did you even have time to summon your shard blade? I mean, really, it's a Sanderson reference. Never mind.
I know.
And his panic, he's like, I have to go now. Gawyn could be dead by now. Dude, she's been in prison for weeks. Your 5 minutes of waiting for someone to show up is not like wounding 4 men so you don't have to wait a few minutes isn't going to make a fucking difference.
It's so ridiculous. Like, yes, Egwene's situation is moving quickly at this point, but he has no way of knowing that. And even so, the 10 minutes necessary to follow the proper order of paperwork and phone trees is not, it's not the end of the world. Like, it's so, his sense of urgency is really out of control.
Yes, it is. And it's like he's compelled or something to support the Emerald seat and has to go.
It's like he's a dipshit by nature.
Well, yes, that too.
Right, and then also we have an early foreshadowing of how Tam takes Cadsuane down a peg when Bryne's like, oh, what, you're going to fight me to prove that you're right? Do you think that you have better sword skills than me equals you have better opinions than me? Are you a fucking child right now?
Yes, the answer is yes.
I know. The answer is totally yes. But, like, I do like Bryne being like, bully tactics and might makes right is not how we win the last battle. That's not what we're doing on the good guys team.
Yeah, Gawyn notices that, like, someone's cleaning up for Bryne. Obviously, that's going to be Suan.
Someone meticulous to tidy up for him because she has everything shipshape. Because boats. I'm choosing to believe that it's because boats, not because women. Am I right?
I'm going to go with that. Also, that she's got Min doing the actual laundry.
Min's not here.
Oh, then not anymore. That's right. Or that's right. She has novices doing her laundry and she's doing Gawyn's. That's right. Yeah.
Bryne's. She is not going to do Gawyn's laundry. No, absolutely not.
His whitey. Oh gosh, so I want to make a whitey tidy joke, but mingle that with white cloak joke.
That's the other brother.
Whitey tidy cloaks. That's
galad.
That's galad. I know.
All right, so I do like the part where Bryne is drinking tea he doesn't like, and Gawyn asks why, and he grumbles when it's supposed to be good for my health. And it's like, oh, he likes Swan. He's drinking the tea, and she likes him because she's like, you need to drink that for your health. Like, aw. There's like that is a level of antagonistic flirting that I find very cute. And then, yeah, I think the next thing is Bryne discovering who Gawyn is with respect to the enemy forces. I think we should probably touch on that briefly. That he gets real pissed when he's like, I've been losing men, like dead.
You've killed my men. Yeah. You and your strategy and your knowledge, because you know who I was. You knew I was leading these troops, and you used your knowledge of my strategy that I taught you to hunt down and kill men with who I thought would be safe. But you used personal knowledge of me and my strategies to kill my men. Like, the fact that he doesn't right then and there throw him in the stockade to never, ever, ever come back out again, or whatever, like, prison he's got, is pretty remarkable to me.
I would have liked to see him backhand Gawyn so hard he doesn't regain consciousness until he's locked in the stocks. Like, that's the correct reaction.
And then ransom him back to the White Tower.
Or to Elaine, either way, fucking make him a pain in the ass for someone else and make him totally out of the picture. Like, tie him up and leave him in a dirty cell with one bowl of gruel a day. We don't like Gawyn on this podcast.
Here's the quote. We'll see. The sisters rarely visit the soldiers. They have their own businesses about. It's like, yeah, you're not going to get healing for those men.
Yeah, and then Gawyn's trying to be like, I gotta kill Althor, and Bryne's like, also bad call. Because Morghese was ruining Andor, not just being mean to me as an ex-lover, but like ruining Andor. And Gawyn's like, I can't hear you.
And Gareth Bryne's like, first of all, he didn't kill your mother. And even if he did, that probably was for a good reason, right? Like I don't believe that this man came in here and killed her out of spite or to fuck with you or because he's cruel. It's because your mother was literally destroying everything we cared about Andor.
Yeah. And Gawyn's like, no. Which, like, again, he is so confident in his knowledge, he will not accept other information. And this is something that can be good, right? This is part of what Avienda's lesson is that sometimes you have to stand up against all the wise ones and say, no, I am correct. That is an important part of assuming authority. It can go too far when you will not be checked by anyone or anything whatsoever and you are still a child, like Gawyn Trakand, right? Like, there is not an easy answer. Every person, every situation has to be approached in its own way.
Yes.
And it's a real interesting knife edge to walk between those two different outcomes.
Yeah, the difference between being right and being wrong. It's like you have to support yourself, but you also have to be open to the fact that you might be wrong. But then, like, how do you... I struggle with that, right? I struggle with that at work all the time because I often have to take actions at work based on a very complicated machine where there's zero way to know the status of everything that's going on. And so I have to basically say, okay, based on my best guess, I have to take a step forward. But I could be wrong, right? It's a percentage thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough place to know, like, where do you ask for help and where do you trust your own judgment?
Yeah.
And I think that's experience. That's where experience really comes in. And that's something that a lot of our characters really have very little of. I mean, they're gaining it quickly because of the way the world works, but they're still pretty young.
Right. I mean, Avienda has been getting trained specifically to come to that realization, whereas Gawyn has been freewheeling it, whatever it is that he's doing this whole time. He has not had a focused course of study to bring him that confidence and experience like Avienda has.
No, I mean, he's literally been put out to pasture in an attempt to kill him, right? Like...
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's interesting to contrast Gawyn's unshakable wrongness with Avienda's ultimate realization of her own power. They're just so much the same but different.
The same but different, but the same.
Yeah, it's important to realize that Gawyn is not frustrating for no reason, right? He is frustrating because this is a real human experience of being wrong and being right. And what does that mean? Where does confidence come from? Where does authority come from? Who are you trying to impress and why and on what grounds? Like, it's not easy, and it's good to see someone really complexly and completely fucking it up.
Yeah. No, and like Bryne asks all the right questions. What have you been doing that is more important than that? And Gawyn, I grew entangled. And that's what clues him in that Bryne's like, wait a minute, what have you been doing? How did you know all this?
Like, what rock have you been living under exactly? Oh, that rock, the White Tower rock. Yeah, it's and the way that Gawyn says, oh, my sister, who I'm sworn to protect, has finally achieved the throne where she needs a first prince of the sword. I am going to abandon that for the sake of my not quite a girlfriend, who does not know I am here and has no knowledge of wanting anything from me. I'm going to dismiss her and the oath I've made to my sister all in one fell swoop, and also fuck Althor. Like, bro.
And his excuse is like, Egwene is with the Aes Sedai, and I thought Elaine was as well, so that's why I'm just, hanging out with the Aes Sedai. But you knew they were with the rebels. Why are you hanging out with the Tower? It's his logic. It just pisses me off. Which I guess is a well-written character.
I mean, we have strong feelings about him, so, he's a very memorable character. The whole fandom has an opinion on him.
But he dreamed about having sex with Egwene once or twice.
He didn't even know it was a real dream. Like a real dream world dream. He didn't even know that was a possibility. All they've ever done is make out and disagree on politics. That's just so not the basis for throwing away your lifelong oath to your sister. That's so dumb. Like, Elaine needs you. Just because she has the throne doesn't mean she doesn't need you.
Not to mention, you should have been there while she was getting the throne.
Yeah, first of all, you should have been there. But now that you know, you should be hightailing. You should be asking Bryne for a fresh horse and hightailing it out of there.
Or a gateway.
Or a gateway. He just learned gateways exist. Maybe this army has gateways. Like, yeah, it's just so... He should be flipping over to go to Elaine in Camelin. So at the second he hears about that, he should be like, you're right, I've been fucking up, but I'm going to make it good right now. I'm going to go first Prince of the Sword so good, Brigida can actually have a day off.
God. And Gawyn's response when Bryne's like, oh, you should be in Andor. He's like, no, you should be in Andor. And he's like, no, your mother threw me out, and like my place is not there anymore. You actually swore an oath to the person who is currently sitting in Andor.
Yeah.
I have not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I literally was told to leave. You were not. We are not the same.
And Gawyn he's saying that his mother had a good motive for all the shit she did.
No, she didn't.
No.
You weren't there.
Mm-mm.
The man who was there and who has 3 times the lived experience of you knows better than you what happened. Obviously. Yeah, he's just so privileged. He's just in such a little privilege bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get distracted with the quest to find Sheriam because maybe she's a tower spy, and we have to spend a lot of time talking about how she looks different than all the other washwomen and stereotype.
Yeah, I have nothing further. They discover her and they bring her back to question her about why she's hanging out, and they get information in the next chapter.
Yeah. Yep. So, moving to the next chapter.
Moving to the next chapter. Chapter 25. Our symbol is the dark friend symbol, the 2 women of opposite colors face to face. And it's called In Darkness because it's Sheriam, and she's a dark friend alert, obviously.
Yeah, it's a very, very dark friendy chapter. Sheriam peeked into her dark tent, hesitant, but saw nothing inside. Allowing herself a smile of satisfaction, she stepped in and drew the flaps closed. Things were going quite well, for once. Of course, she still checked her tent before she entered, searching for the one who had sometimes lurked inside. The one whom she'd never been able to sense, yet always felt as though she should. Yes, Sheriam still checked, and probably would for months yet. But there was no need now. No phantom waited to punish her. The square little tent was large enough to stand up in, with a cot along one side and a trunk along the other. There was just room for a desk, but it would so crowd the space that she'd barely be able to move. Besides, there was a perfectly acceptable desk nearby, in Egwene's unused tent. There had been talk of giving that tent to someone else. Most sisters had to share, though more tents were being brought in each week. However, the Amerlin's tent was a symbol. As long as there was hope of Egwene's return, her tent should wait for her. It was kept neat by the inconsolable Chesa, whom Sheriam still caught crying about her mistress's captivity. Well, so long as Egwene was away, that tent was functionally Sheriam's for all but sleeping. After all, an Amerlin's keeper was expected to look after her affairs. Sheriam smiled again, sitting down on her cot. Not long ago, her life had been a perpetual cycle of frustration and pain. Now that was over. Bless Ramonda. Whatever else Sheriam thought of the fool woman, Ramonda had been the one to chase Halima, and Sheriam's punishments, out of the camp. Pain would come again. There was always agony and punishment involved in the service she gave, but she had learned to take the times of peace and cherish them. And I'll cut it there, because I think that's a good peek into Sheriam's headspace at the opening of this chapter.
I like how deep we get into Sheriam's. Why did it have to be end times now? I just wanted to get ahead of my sisters. I really love that diatribe from her. Really well written, really good insight into her character. This idea that, like, she really wasn't anticipating being a dark friend. She just thought, hey, it's something that my girlfriends are getting to. It's like witchcraft, whatever,
She's just joining one of those weird secret societies in college because that's how you get ahead in law school. And it turns out that, you can actually summon the devil? I thought this was just a drinking party.
Wait, that prophecy's true now? Like, I mean, it was true. I just didn't think it would happen now. Like, why me?
I love that inversion on the 13 most powerful evil dedicated to nihilism. And then there's just like, I thought this was a way to get ahead in office politics. Like, I did not expect for this to be a real big deal kind of thing. I thought this was going to be an extra weird feather in my cap, and that was it.
God damn it, I accidentally became important at work. Shoot. Like, now
Right,
people depend on
right.
me or are looking to me to do things, and the punishments will continue.
And I also like the part where she's not evil in the same like way as a lot of the other dark friends that we've seen. She very much has been forced to become evil because that's how you play the game, but it has been reluctant rather than like, ooh, this is the way I get to torture people. This is the way I get to have power over people in a, like an evil capital E kind of way. She just kind of was like, oh, that keeps escalating.
But in a way, isn't she more evil then?
Well, that's the point, right?
Right, like this is true evil, because this is truly where people
Exactly.
get caught up, and this is where most people find themselves in a situation where they're doing evil things but don't think of themselves as an evil person, because they just join the group to get a little bit ahead, and one step leads to another, where to avoid pain, avoid punishment, avoid firing, you end up doing something that you find extremely unethical, but you feel like you have to do it anyway.
Right. And it's not like with Varen, right, where Varen actually decides to like go double agent on it and make the best of a bad situation. This is someone who has no spine and keeps making little compromises and justifying it to themselves and never has any kind of larger overarching cosmology to fit that into. Because, I mean, Varen did horrible things, but was taking notes, right? Like, Sheriam's just whining about how she didn't want to get into it for horrible things.
Reminds me of the difference between science and fucking around.
No.
Writing down the results.
Once you start writing it down, now you have transcended into science. Fucking around often inspires that, but it
Right.
isn't science until
You start making
Right.
doing recordings, making data, doing that sort of thing. So the difference between being a shitty dark friend and being a cool triple agent, writing it down.
right. Because yeah, Sheriam just is like, oh, boo-hoo me, whereas Varen was like, well, shit. Now what? You know? Varen yes-anded that.
Time to take down the Black Aja from the inside. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, but Sheriam is a far more relatable form of evil. Like, oh, well, if I just don't say anything to my boss, if I don't stand up at work, if I don't insist on this or that concession, then I'll be able to get ahead this time, and maybe later when I have power, I can do something better. And then pretty soon you're 8 generations deep in a racial caste system, and it's like that didn't work out so well, did it? Right? And Sheriam's only been doing this since, sometime in the last 10 years. But, like, imagine the damage that an army of people who live for 500 years can do,
So I have a question. Did Ramonda really chase Halima out? I don't remember that.
Ramonda is the one who said, we have to arrest Delana and Halima. Ramonda was the one who connected the dots and went, oh, shit, you guys, I know what the problem is. We got to go get them.
But I feel like they were already gone at that point.
It was all on the same day. It was because of the Ashaman in camp, and then Narishma was like, a man just tried to eavesdrop or something like that. And then Ramonda was like, we got to go arrest Delana. And then the line's like, she had to explain, of course, right? Because she has the light bulb flash. And in the time it takes her to explain, yeah, the opportunity has already been lost. As soon as the weave gets detected, I'm assuming, is when Halima says, we got to leave. Because obviously Halima was the one who was trying to eavesdrop. So yeah, but it all happens in just a matter of minutes, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm. And so while she's sort of sitting there in her tent, moaning over the fact that it's the end of days, she gets a visit from a different Forsaken. Instead of Halima, a.k.a. Belthamel, however you want to call the original name, she's now getting visited by Mesana.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's definitely Mesana, right? Like,
oh yeah, it's her distinctive costume.
Her distinctive costume. We see her make the gateway back to the tower, which is her home base. Like, this is very obviously Mesana. Now that there's not a Forsaken in the Rebel camp. It seems like she's now trying to manage both the Rebel camp and the tower itself. So she's sort of taken out. This is what happens when one of your coworkers quits. They don't get a replacement. They just give you both jobs, right? She's been doing good work. So what does she get for her good work? More work.
Yeah.
Keep these two apart, right? That's her goal. She's trying to keep the two towers apart. She's trying to do the exact opposite that Egwene is doing. So that's why she's like, oh, how are all these people meeting? And she gets the report that they're meeting in the dreams with these ter'angreal. She's like, we'll steal the ter'angreal so they can't meet with the Amarylline seat anymore.
Right. And also, get rid of your Amarylline seat. We thought we were getting a weak-willed child. We got a woman with the face of a child. It is not working out. She is unifying the tower despite everything we can do. You got to depose that bitch. And Sheriam's like, with the whiplash right now.
Right. Because she's like,
you're the ones that ordered me to put her there.
Right.
But, Masana is correct. Egwene is putting the tower back together despite everything being thrown at her. It makes sense for them to want to depose her in terms of keeping the opposition going. Because Egwene is somehow opposing so hard, she's bringing it back together, right?
Right. And it's like, yeah, Masana's seeing her well-laid plans, the schism that she created falling apart, right? She's seeing people start to support Egwene. She's seeing the rebels all also supporting Egwene. They are united. Even under Lelaine, who's starting to win this war between her and Ramonda, right? Lelaine's winning it by supporting Egwene. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Egwene.
Yeah, POV switch to Egwene in the dungeon. Talking to another Aes Sedai. Siain this time.
And do you remember which one she is? Do you have the backstory on Siain?
Off the top of my head, I am pretty sure she is the white in charge of the Black Aja hunting team.
Got it. So isn't she one of the rebels though?
No,
okay. But she's pledged allegiance to Egwene at this point, basically. No, she's not one of those groups. But she's
impressed with Egwene. She's tried to out-logic Egwene when she came down to the meeting and was talking to them. Siain is who Elaida first went to bring down Alviar and AKA discover the entire Black Aja. Siain's the one that went to Pavara, and Siain is the one that was kind of the final boss for convincing the group that Egwene is not a child, right?
Yeah. Well, and
she's a sitter.
And this is where I'd say they're not necessarily on her side, but she went down and confronted them and had that moment with them. And there's a certain amount of the rebels and this group and Egwene are all doing things under Elaida's nose.
Yes.
That they're not supposed to be doing. And so they're not necessarily on the same side so much as they all have the same person they're conspiring against, which is Elaida.
The strange bedfellows is getting very strange at this point.
Right. And so I sort of think of them as on Egwene's side, even though she's not specifically.
Yeah, they're not pledged to her.
No.
But yeah, they're kind of working to undermine Elaida, and they would kind of rather have Egwene, and they're in that transitioning process because she out-talked all of them, and Siain as the white, it was like, damn.
Yeah, no, and they get their support once Elaida's kidnapped in the next few.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, as you can see here, because Siain is bringing Egwene information and giving her updates and treating her like a rebel Amarylline who has a viable right to the contest and who needs to be treated as a person of respect. Siain's giving her that respect.
And Egwene is giving her command. She's like, keep bringing these things up. Keep talking about these things. I want you to stir up this dissent against Elaida and be like, yo, she is really fucked up. Keep bringing, and Siain says, sure, yeah, okay, right. So there's a certain amount of doing what she wants.
Right, because they're working to the same ends, and Siain was able to prove that to herself when they had that confrontation in the basement. She's like, I know Egwene is working to the same ends as me more than Elaida is. Egwene is telling me this is what you need to do to help prepare the tower to better face the last battle. And who doesn't want the tower better prepared to face the last battle?
And you know what? It's hard to prepare for a battle. When the kitchen's on the 6th level, you do not want kitchens on the 6th level. You've got fires and
And they don't have indoor plumbing as far as I know, which means all the water has to be carried up through some mechanical or human means.
Or magical.
Right, which I think we mostly just see servants carrying buckets of water.
I
don't think that they've ever engineered a single solution with even regular ropes, much less the power.
That's always crazy to me when, like, wizards can't come up with indoor plumbing.
I know. I'm like, your medieval realism is missing a bit of the touch of God that adding magic to the world. Like,
I've come to like magic systems where they kind of recreate the modern world just with magic instead of like gasoline and electricity.
yeah, totally. Because that's fun. It's blending technology and magic is more fun than just we have no concept of engineering. We just have big bada boom magic.
Yeah, we can create Gwendyar. I can't think how that would be useful in engineering in any way, shape, or form.
You know what it is it's because those stories tend to be old fairy tales being retold for a modern audience, and fairy tales are set in a pre-industrial setting, kind of by definition.
That makes sense.
It's hard to put fairy tales in a more modern context than it feels like sci-fi. It doesn't feel like a fairy tale. Anyway, yeah, that's all I got for the chapter.
Egwene, I must stay firm. I warmed this pot myself, and now I must boil in it, if that's what will protect the tower. Yeah, that's Egwene just in her cell being like, I gotta keep trying. I can't give up.
The one last thing here is the very last line. They knew she continued to resist. That was all she could give them. And I was thinking in the next chapter with Aviendha, how she's so frustrated that all she can do is this little punishment, right? And like, again, there's these really interesting contrasts where Egwene is experiencing that confinement as an actual act of resistance, whereas Aviendha is experiencing it as the final straw that pushes her to embrace her power. And like, they're very similar situations in a lot of ways, and they both take very correct interpretations that are wildly different. It's like, again, these things are not one answer. They truly aren't. Aviendha is not bringing honor to herself by suffering the punishment. Egwene is, you know?
That makes sense. I feel like they're both speaking out against unjust punishment in different ways, right? One is by your allies and one is by your enemies, but either way, it's unjust. And you can go to your allies and say, hey, I'm the same as you. You shouldn't be punishing me. And with your enemies, you just have to say, this is unjust. I will bear it, but it is unjust.
Yeah.
And by bearing it and saying it does not matter, I will bear it no matter what you do to me, it sort of people around you can be like, oh, yeah, wow. That really seems outsized punishment for what happened. And that's how you fight the person. Yeah.
Yeah. And in both cases, you have to have a very strong internal sense of what is right for you in that situation. Again, something Gawyn does not have. Gawyn has no idea what is right for him. Egwene and Aviendha.
No, he believes random rumors. That's what's right. Not any of the people around him he should trust. Just random rumors.
Yeah. Gawyn and Aviendha actually have an internal compass that points in a steady direction. And Aviendha needs to get a little bit over her internal gaslighting. But both of them have an internal compass that is stronger than external forces, stronger than random rumors, is stronger than old Mill the peddler. All right, third chapter of the day. We are not even an hour into recording. Look at us doing what we said we were going to do. Gold star for us. Starting in on chapter 26, a crack in the stone, and our symbol is the unweaving Teleranriad pattern of ages symbol.
I'm thinking of
Bubble of Evil symbol?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Because we have the roaches that pop up in the tent later. Not in the Aviendha POV, but later in the chapter.
Which is, that's a fun bubble of evil.
It's so gross.
Yeah.
I hate it so much. So visceral. So yes, it's a good bubble of evil. But first, Aviendha. Aviendha surveyed the manor grounds, swarming with people preparing to depart. Bashir's men and women were well trained for wetlanders, and they worked efficiently to stow their tents and prepare their gear. However, compared to the Aiel, the other wetlanders, those who weren't actual soldiers, were a mess. Camp women skittered this way and that, as if sure they would leave some task undone or some item unpacked. The messenger boys ran with their friends, trying to look busy so that they wouldn't have to do anything. The civilians' tents and equipment were only slowly being packed and stowed, and they would need horses, wagons, and teams of drivers to get them all where they needed to go. Aviendha shook her head. The Aiel brought only what they could carry, and their war band included only spears and wise ones. And when more than just spears were required for an extended campaign, all workers and craftspeople knew how to prepare themselves for departure with speed and efficiency. There was honor in that. Honor which demanded that each person be able to care for themselves and their own, not slowing the clan down. She shook her head, turning back to her task. The only ones who truly lacked honor on a day like this were those who did not work. She dipped a finger into the pail of water on the ground in front of her, then raised her hand and let it hover over a second pail. A drop of water dripped free. She moved her hand and did it again. It's the worst punishment. It's so, like, my brain explodes with boredom just reading it.
I'm like reaching for my phone to start flipping through it, just thinking about it. I'm like, no, my constant stimulation brain could not for a second.
No,
especially if you're being punished and just like having anxiety attacks over like what you did wrong and you can't figure it out and you're just going over the same thing over and over. Absolute hell.
Yep. Do not like.
But with the added like cultural norm on top of that of you're sitting around doing nothing when everybody else is working publicly where everyone can see you not working.
Like, just, can you, like, the amount of social pressure that she is internally generating from her cultural conditioning. Like, the wise ones have really twisted all the screws as tight as they will go for this one.
No, and you can see in her head, she's going around. She goes, perhaps she was too dense to sort it out. Perhaps she didn't deserve to be a wise one. And then 2 paragraphs later, she'd accepted herself as their equal, right? Like,
she wanted to become one. She's surprised to find that. She's angry she can't have it. Like, it's boiling over.
But she understands she is their equal. She just doesn't understand why she's being punished, right? Like, and the pieces are all there, but she's not putting it together.
And then the pattern is like, fine, Min, will you go help?
Yeah.
And Min's like, yes, pattern, I'll go help my fellow future wife.
And Min does the great thing, which is just be like, what you doing? Like, why aren't you doing something else? That seems like everybody else is politely ignoring it. And Min just like sticks her boot in her mouth in a very, I don't know, appropriate way. It's like sometimes you need someone to be like, hey, can you explain why the fuck you're doing this dumbass thing? And then in the explaining of it, you realize that it is a dumbass thing to be doing. Instead of everybody just walking around you and being like, oh yeah, I guess you've been fucking it up this whole time. Cool.
Right. Yeah, it's an emperor has no clothes kind of moment. Right. Min just wanders in with no cultural sensitivity to what Aviendha is going through and just blows it wide open by being like, but that doesn't make sense. And it's like, that's the fucking point. It's my culture. It's not supposed to make sense. Right? Like that's the water that she is swimming in that Min is pointing at. And Min is coming over being like, can I talk to anyone at all about my personal experience and trauma and how hard it is to be married to Rand? Like, can I have his sympathetic ear for once in my life instead of always having to do emotional labor for everyone else? And Aviendha, unfortunately, is like, no, this is the catalyst for me having a big thing. I'm going to be gone for an extended weekend doing ayahuasca in the desert.
Yeah, and she's felt his pain. She knows Min has felt his pain. Like, can you not talk about the pain that Rand is going through? No, Aviendha still hasn't matured to that point that she can talk about emotional pain, right? Like, we need to get beyond that, Aviendha. Come on.
Well, maybe after she deals with all the future visions and trauma and stuff. I feel like she does come back a lot more grounded. I really wish we could have seen Aviendha, the true wise one, talking to Min. I don't think we ever get to see them like actually talk about what it's like being married to Rand, and that would have really given us a lot of plot closure.
The reunion, I feel like we could have done with a much better everybody together in a room moment. Sort of a sitting around the dinner room table, like everybody having a meal together, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, I love those scenes, and I feel like we could have done with that with this group, and like it could have been really, really good because we have all these people who have gone through their struggles and now are ready to fight the last battle because they have become the people who they are going to be. And I think a big part of, I'm so happy we have the ending in these books, but a big part of my disappointment in them is how bad the few reunion scenes are that we do get, right? Like the interaction between Rand and Gawyn, dumb. The interaction between Matt and Rand, really dumb. Like there's a couple of Perrin doesn't reunite with anybody. He just watches them from their dreams, which is a little creepy. Or maybe is that Perrin and Matt where he pulls the badger out? I think it's Perrin and Matt, and that's
Perrin and
just
Matt.
Oh, so bad, so bad. So, maybe I'm glad he didn't write more of those scenes because they were just awful.
Yeah.
So, but I would have loved to see more of it. So I don't know what to tell you. This food's terrible and this portion sizes are too small.
Yeah. Definitely complaining about both at the same time. So yeah, Min also sort of tries to ask Aviendha about like their relationship and is like, are we gonna at some point start trying to stab each other with knives, because I'm kind of anxious all the time that's gonna happen. And Aviendha's like, that's a silly thing to worry about because I have learned zero cultural sensitivity at all, and what little I learned I regressed on because now Brandon Sanderson is writing me and I've never been to the wetlands in my life.
Yeah, there is that. I do love the line that when Min flourishes her knife and Aviendha's like, yeah, that's real impressive. I could have killed you 3 times while you were doing that.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, that hurt. Min and Tom, man, them and their knife twirls. It's like, okay, that I like as a cross-cultural thing, but her whole like thing about not understanding why Min would think that they were going to fight over Rand is like, come on, you've been around Wetlanders enough to understand the mechanics of why she would think that. Right. You could diffuse that more gracefully.
And at this point, Min hasn't really been around Aiel. I can excuse her cultural ignorance a little bit more. But Aviendha's like, maybe Aviendha's like, stop making me do the work, right? Like, maybe she gets it and she's just being deliberately obtuse so she doesn't have to. I don't know about Aviendha. Sometimes I think she just like doesn't like Min to not like Min.
It is a weird relationship.
Because she felt so much guilt about Elaine, right? Because she promised Elaine she would look after Rand, and then she ended up fucking Rand while she was supposed to be preventing anybody else from fucking Rand for Elaine, and it was this whole thing, right? That was just absolutely. And now that she's over that, there's this other person who comes in who's also fucking Rand, and she's like, wait, I was supposed to stop that too. Oh no. Like, I can see where she would have some resentment against Min, right?
That does actually make sense. I'd never thought about that, but yeah, it's the Aiel are so straightforward and so circuitous when it comes to relationship stuff at the same time.
Speduncle, I don't know how you enjoyed the Badger scene. I thought it was terrible. It was poorly written. I different strokes, different folks, I suppose. But
yeah,
it was fan pandering in the worst way possible, and not actually how those characters would interact, in my opinion.
Oh, so that means that some fans would appreciate it then because they were being pandered to.
Fuck. That's how that works, isn't it?
That is how that works. Congratulations, you're an outlier because you're autistic.
Yeah, and then
okay, so Aviendha. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, same thing. Min's like, "What do we do now?" And Aviendha's like, "We just keep doing what we're doing. I don't see why we have to change anything. Change is hard and bad." Okay.
Yeah. And then Min, makes Aviendha blow up. And Aviendha walks off and repeatedly tries to walk away from the situation and keeps finding herself pointed at Rand. And it's almost like a dream sequence because the pattern is just so freaking desperate for her to get it. It's just like, no, every time you turn, you're going to turn back towards Rand until you see the wise ones and then just stomp up to them and get it over with. Like, just let it out. Once she starts moving, once she gets up and walks away from Min, she can't stop until the entire emotional tide has been unleashed. And she does.
But yeah, I love the Aviendha's confrontation with the wise ones is probably long overdue. I will have no more of your punishments. Tell me what you wish of me or send me away. It takes long enough, but they keep asking, are you done? Have you done the punishments? Are you learning? And so then they go through and they sort of verify. They have a couple of questions where they're like, are you rejecting the punishments? Do you think your opinion's as strong as ours? Oh, you think you're our equal? And she goes, yeah, if you have nothing else to teach me other than punishing me for absolutely no reason, then clearly I am your equal because these are really dumb punishments. And so they go, congratulations. And then, the you are the 10,000th customer balloon goes off, right? And then, woo! Like, you're now a wise one. That's all you had to say.
And on the inside, she's like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And like, because that's what your inner voice is always going to tell you, right? Until you learn to trust it. And sometimes the only way to trust it is to get kicked out of the nest.
Yeah. Even if you're not ready, you got to go for it sometimes.
Sometimes you're never going to be ready. And you literally do. It's not faking it until you make it. It's just accepting that nobody has any idea what they're doing. We're all just doing our best. It's not faking it. It's just reality.
And they kind of compare like, hey, and we do it this way so that like everyone who becomes a wise one has, authority in and of themselves. We don't have ranking. We don't have a structure. We're not like the Aes Sedai where like our weakest ones have to beg for attention and our strongest ones. And we saw that in the Aes Sedai. I mean, just constantly the way the power structure works is really dumb.
The Aiel are so anarchist. They're like, we have structure to the degree that we need structure based on people's actual practical applied experience as needed. That's it.
And it comes back to like chief among chiefs, right? You don't have one king telling you what to do. You just have a bunch of chiefs who get together and discuss things.
Right? Yeah, it's much more consensus based. I do agree, Vuji, that it doesn't feel like any of the training before implied that was what they wanted, but that is similar to the Aes Sedai, right? The Aes Sedai have a whole other layer of education that comes after they graduate to Aes Sedai, so like maybe that's a conceit that both schools of thought have.
Well, what I'm thinking is that all the punishment before has a reason behind it, right? And by doing it for a while, you quickly realize, oh, either I'm being taught to obey or I'm being taught like, or I made a mistake and I'm being punished for that. Like there's very rarely ever punishment without reason. And I think that's the clue that's different than anything else they've done before.
Right. They're relying on your critical thinking to be like, there isn't a reason this time. And that is a problem and I need to call it out. And then they're like, yeah, that actually was the test. Was can you call out bullshit? Which we all need to learn to not just mindlessly accept whatever the authority figure hands us. We need to have critical thinking skills to say, no, that is bullshit. I will not engage. I will not support that. I will not give it oxygen, whatever the case may be.
No, I like it. I like it as a final sort of test before they send you off to go through the actual test, right? That's the sort of how you know when you're ready to be tested.
I love the line, you stubbornly continued to obey.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That really sums it up, both in terms of Aviendha as a person and also in terms of the Aiel approach to things.
Hell,
They're
just
the wise ones.
Just the life approach sometimes, man. People out there do stubbornly love to continue to obey.
Oh, they'll defend obeying and doing things that are bad for them for so long. I like hitting myself. No, you don't. But, I mean, yeah, Aviendha's like, holy shit, the last lesson was learning to stand up for myself. But, like, she had not thought of herself as someone who needed to learn to stand up for herself. She was a warrior. Of course she can stand up for herself. But, like, standing up against enemies with sharp pointing objects is different from standing up to your colleagues that you have to continue working with. It's a different skill set.
Because one feels right and one feels awful.
Right. Managing social pressure is very different than getting through a survival situation.
And so she gets through all that and goes, I'll have to thank. And again, this is Sanderson who writes everything out for us and lays it all out. She would have to thank Min, though Min didn't realize what she'd done. Yes, we all read the earlier part of the chapter, Brandon. You didn't have to say that. Thank you very much.
I did like the idea that she's going to have to go to Min in humility and say thank you. I liked that. And if we had gotten that scene, I would have been fine with it. But
right.
We had twice the words we needed to get that across as a foreshadowing hint. Because I would have loved Min to, like, see Aviendha come to her, like, way more humble, way more grounded, way less antagonistic, and, like, go through that whole, like, cross-cultural, like, I don't know what exactly I did, but somehow we're becoming closer and, like, I don't feel as scared of you.
I thought there was a moment later where she does say, you prompted me to go do that. Like, she actually has I think there is a moment where she says that to Min. Yeah.
Oh. Well, I hope so, because
I'm almost certain that it exists. Yeah.
I don't remember it, and I would like to see it, so that would be a nice thing to rediscover if it's out there. Clearly, it was not impactful enough for my taste. Otherwise, I would remember it.
No, I think it's very much a side comment, like while they're having a discussion about something else. She's like, "Oh, and by the way, I should tell you, like you helped inspire my." She's like, "Congratulations for being a wise one," and she's like, "Oh yeah, you helped me realize that I needed to." Yeah.
No, I would have preferred that to be a proper heart-to-heart over wine that ends with them kissing. Would have been way better for this dynamic.
We already know the Elaine Avienda dynamic. We don't need to add Min into there.
Yes, we do.
We don't have to.
Why not?
I'm fine with it. I'm just saying we don't have to do it, right? I'm not knocking you down. I'm just saying
I want them to connect at another level, and why not have Avienda treat Min like she treats Elaine? Like a pillow princess.
I honestly think Min would be offended. She's like, I may dress like a boy, but I don't. I'm into him.
Anyway,
I don't know. I'm just saying, Min to me always read as. Oh well, never mind. I'm not going to say that.
Everyone is pansexual. This is my worldview.
Not everybody wants to fuck everybody else. Most of us just want to fuck like half the population.
I truly cannot comprehend that. That makes no sense to me.
I know.
It's okay. A lot of things don't make sense to me. Thank you, chat. You're all validating me. All right. So now we're talking about Ruidian. Now we're talking about how
Ruidine.
Avienda. Oh my God.
I love Kate Redding and Michael Kramer very much so, but the switch between Mogadine, Ruidine, the Dean in everything was, I don't know where it came from or where it went, but yeah, it changed. It changed over the course of the series. Mogadine, right? Like that's the one that everyone focuses on, but like Ruidian's one of them, right? Like there's just a ton others where they just went with one accent, and then years passed between the recording, and they changed.
How dare they?
How
dare? Yeah. But yeah, they're sending her off to that city in the waste, and they talk about what's going to be different versus the same, right? Because the city is open to people now.
It's inhabited.
But the columns and the rings are still being given a wide berth and are still available for and useful in the maturation rituals of the leaders of the Aiel. But also, Avienda is going to be the first one, as far as they know, to go in since the city has changed, which is interesting. Test subject. And they tell her to go, but not to use traveling to get close, but not to go straight to the city, to actually spend a few days being in the Threefold Land and traveling to the city on foot.
Well, to go to Cold Rock's hold, which is the hold she's from. Like, you can travel home, but you have to go to Ruidian from home.
Or from somewhere that's close by, because they're like, you have to go quickly, but also you need to reacclimate to the waste. And
she's from Cold Rock's hold.
Land.
That's where they say travel to Cold Rock's hold, and that's where she's from, right? Like, they're not saying travel to the Golden Bowl or travel to whatever that peak is where you can look out and see it. Like, those are all places you legitimately could have traveled to.
I think they just picked the nearest good location that was a good runaway. I think if she hadn't been born there, it wouldn't matter. It's just that's a good spot. But regardless, they're like, don't hop straight in. Don't leave Rance camp and walk into the columns on the same day. Like, take a few days to be in the waste and walk there like our ancestors have for time immemorial, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, this is going to be the last chance you have to have a moment to yourself. You're going to be able to think about your life. But after this, there's going to be the test and the last battle, and things are going to be, and then you're going to lose your feet. And it's going to be a real problem for you. So like, there's a lot going on in your life coming up. So
this is the last good run she'll ever have.
That really is the last good walk she goes on.
Oof.
Cause yeah, kaboom. No more feet.
Yeah, but she gets a Forsaken maidservant out of it.
That's true. Cool. That's terrifying. Yeah, this is Avienda, the only one. Well, not the only one, but one of the few people who keeps a Forsaken as a servant after the last battle. Yeah,
exactly. Oh yeah, Lilligen. It's a whole action sequence in the middle of the last battle, kind of near the end.
Yeah, essentially, there's an explosion and she jumps and it cripples her, and she does a lot of. Doesn't she fight Grendel like crawling around with like or like her legs below her knees are essentially fucked. Was it
No,
Grendel?
she leaps at Grandal and fucks her up as the explosion happens and shreds her feet. But the way that the weaves fall apart, I forget the specifics, but the way that Grandal fucks up her weave because she's being attacked by Avienda, even as Avienda's feet are being disintegrated, turns into her becoming Avienda's permanent slave.
That's right.
Like the compulsion weave flips back on her.
It bounces the compulsion weave back onto her.
And yeah, so when Avienda comes to, her feet are fucked, but she has Grandal in Hessalam form, just kind of like waiting
Carrying
to
her
do whatever
around,
she
yeah.
wants.
Yeah.
So we'll get there when we get there. It's in 2 books, guys. Calm down.
I don't know if she loses her whole feet, but even after being healed, she doesn't walk normally. So she has to lose some parts of her feet, or else the healing would have just gotten her back to normal.
I'm pretty sure she's like worn away to the ankle, but again, we'll get there in like 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Read and find out. Hold your horses.
She will have a lot less toe afterwards. Yeah. Terrible.
I love that pun.
Yeah, and Amis is the one specifically sending Avienda off because she's a fellow former maiden, and she was kind of like a second mother to Avienda specifically, and is like, all right, now you make sure not to die in there. Now go off and do the dangerous thing.
And we explicitly say that, the reason Savannah was a wise one is because she declared herself a wise one, and we didn't really have a way to stop that. And so, again, rather than implying it, right, because you could have figured that out from the mechanism. Or just say like, oh, and that explained Savannah. But like...
Yeah, Avienda didn't need to ask that question out loud. She could have thought about it inside and had to be an internal thought that clues us in.
Yeah, right here. Strap her a few times and set her digging holes, I suspect. Amis, I don't know of that ever happening. The closest was Savannah. Cut that. Right there. The closest was Savannah. That's enough of an explanation. Mm-hmm. The next paragraph. Avienda had wondered why the wise ones accepted the Shida woman without complaint. Her declaration had been enough, and so Amis and the others had been forced to accept her. All unnecessary.
Didn't need any of that.
Didn't need any of that. That should have been enough from saying the closest was Savannah. Because that was...
the rest of it is implied.
The previous sentence says, what do you do if an apprentice declares herself ready? Like, I don't know of anyone doing that, but the closest was Savannah is like, okay. Sorry, I know I'm talking myself in circles, but this paragraph talks in circles.
It's a problem.
I wouldn't say it's a problem so much as a stylistic choice, and it's hard for us to talk about.
No, our opinions are objectively correct.
Mm.
We can dictate what other people can and can't like because of what we do and don't like. I literally had this conversation with someone a while back where they were like, what music do you think is what do you think is music? Like, very, very philosophically, what is music? Like, what is music? And I'm like thinking about it, getting all like way off in my head. And then they were like, like, I don't think that rap is music. I just was like, okay, not the philosophical rabbit hole I was going down. Let me just stop you right the fuck there and be like, no, the fact that you don't like it is not the same thing as it is or isn't music. You are not the arbiter of what makes music. I thought we were going into like, is ocean noise music? Is silence music?
Right,
like,
right.
But no, like genres you don't like?
When someone asks you what is gender, and you're like, well, it's a combination of like, what your genes might have been, but it's the result of a protein process that causes a phenotype. And someone's like, well, I don't think transgender people. And you're like, oh, sorry, no, different level, different level.
Right. And fortunately, this person I was talking to was able to sit and listen to me rant at a very loud volume that Brandon could hear at more than the usual level of clarity through the wall between our offices. He's like, who were you ranting at? But it was wild. It was a wild thing. And then they were trying to backtrack and say, well, no, I just meant, it's like, no, you need to be more careful with your words if you just meant something else. Like, no. And the question of what is music is very, very interesting. But anytime that humans have used a whole bunch of noise for creative expression, it is music. Like, if you're making noise for creative expression, it's music. So you can't be tossing whole ass genres of established music under the bus because you don't like it.
What if it's flashing lights? Is that music? You're creating waves. They're just electromagnetic waves instead of sound waves.
I think you need to have a auditory component, which then gets really weird when you consider people who have hearing issues. And also, what about synesthesia?
And people who, you can feel the vibrations with your body, even if you can't hear them.
Yeah, I know someone who is a bass guitarist specifically, and writes their own music, and they have been told repeatedly by deaf people who got to watch sign language interpretation and hear them at shows that, like, I can hear the bass, I can see your vibes, I can see the lyrics, I enjoy your music. Your music is an experience that I am enjoying. So, like, what is music? Is it auditory? Is it vibration? Is it any experience? I mean,
yeah, and what's the difference between noise and music, right? Like that to me is where the question comes into play, right?
Right. Like the ocean is not intentional, but it can fill the same spot. I mean, some people like to listen to ocean noise, right? It's not music because no one meant for it to happen, but it is still pushing happy auditory buttons in your head. So.
And the waves have enough of a rhythm that it kind of approximates a very slow song, right?
Right. But I think that music has to have intentionality behind it. The ocean could never. Right, as Lillian is saying, organized noise, right? Like,
but then where do you argue? Then you talk about jazz, which is intentionally unorganized.
Well, I would say that having the skill to make music is the organization. Like rain can't be organized, right? But water sculpture can be. Complicated. Anyway, tangents upon tangents. Avienda is heading off to Iridia, and her honor is returned. She is very happy she's going to get to come back and have Rand as an equal and POV switch.
Sure, yeah. Just, again, a Sanderson foreshadowing where she ends her POV with her honor had returned. And I just, honor is dead except in the hearts of Avienda. She'll see what she can do. Gotta reference the Brandon Sanderson stuff. Gotta reference it because it's so interesting to see the lines from his later books pop up here, and it's like I'm sure it's not intentional, but I guarantee there's part of his brain that kind of remembers similar phrases and uses them in similar ways, right? And so, yeah, her honor had returned feels very much like the way Brandon Sanderson would end one of his POVs in one of his books, to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I have picked up his books, it definitely felt like I've read this before, and I don't care. And the I've read this before part, I think, is, the fact that he's got a style, and it's impossible to be original from yourself. Like, wherever you go, there you are, right?
Not unless I've got drugs. Sometimes I'm not there then.
I don't think Sanderson does any drugs.
Oh, that might be the problem. Yes, it helps him write very consistently, but, sometimes you got to get out of your own head.
Do you want to finish this chapter?
Wait, is there not just a bubble?
We still have a bubble of evil POV.
A bubble of evil. Okay, yeah. So I've heard the story of the person who suggested this and how it was included in the books at the various cons. I would like to tell that story, but I don't feel like I can remember it with enough fidelity to retell the story on the podcast. But there's an interesting story behind this particular scene, and if you ever get to speak with like Maria Simmons or ask a question about Brandon, this is always a fun question to ask. And I'm sure someone can probably tell me. Maybe I can get the story and I can tell it on the next podcast. But I think it has to do with bugs in the South. And tents. That's all I'm going to say.
I live just south of the 45th parallel, halfway between the equator and the North Pole. And for reasons involving bugs, I will never be moving farther south. Ever. I hear so many horror stories from far southern places about various insects and near insects being large and in charge. And I just cannot. I like living in my temperate rainforest, which has very few.
Would you like to hear any of my bug stories from living in the South for most of my childhood.
I've heard a few, and they live rent-free in my head.
There's the half cockroach in the can of Coke I left out overnight. Pretty sure I ate the other half. There is the June bug carpet on the surface of the pool, because I used to swim at an outdoor pool.
That's the one that lives rent-free in my head, is the carpet of June bugs on the pool. Oh,
Yeah,
God.
literally could not see through them. Gosh. The fact that my mother always jokes she'd potty trained me by telling me to pee on the cockroach, because it was always a dead cockroach floating in the bowl, because we lived in Mississippi at the time, and there was just cockroaches everywhere. Let's see, what I gotta have some other good ones.
I'm not moving places with large cockroaches. It's not happening.
The red ant ones are fun. We used to hang plastic eggs on a tree out front of our house. And there was a red ant mound on the ground. And as I was hanging the trees, of course, you're looking up at the tree. And I put my foot in a red ant mound. And they swarmed up my leg and stung me from probably hip to ankle, as a child. So my parents, I was screaming, right? And so my parents picked me up. And a similar thing happened at a pool. It was sort of like an outdoor pool, and the bathroom was full, so I went around behind the concrete structure to pee on the wall, and was peeing and standing in a red ant nest. So I've had that happen twice, both times miserable. Let's see bugs. But here's the great thing, though. We are slowly destroying all the habitat and wiping bugs off the face of the planet. When I used to drive around, I used to get bug meat all over my windows that I used to have to take off, right? Constantly. Just have to stop and clean your windows because it would get so smeary. If you remember, Men in Black kind of starts with a bug hits the window and the guy does his windshield wipers, and it sucks, right? Because there's bugs. It doesn't happen anymore. We've almost destroyed. The bug population has cratered in this country, which is a shame because they're food for everything else.
I don't think there's very few bugs that I would actually wipe off the face of the earth. I just want them to leave me alone. I just want
that's totally
a 3-foot bubble where I don't have anyone fucking crawling on me.
You should look up the history of raid, because cockroaches apparently used to be common in almost all households before those little bug traps, the roach motels, in the 80s were invented. Or I think it's the 80s, maybe the early 90s. But essentially cockroaches were common in almost all houses in the U.S. And then they invented these things, and roaches have become, for the most part, a thing of the past in most houses.
I'm okay with that.
Extremely effective chemical warfare against bugs.
Yeah, I feel like rodents and insects are two creatures that have explicitly made themselves successful living off of us as parasites, and it is sort of like all-out war when it comes to our immediate spaces is kind of the name of the game. We don't want to make them go extinct. We don't want to have our shit propagate way out into the environment. But, in my house, we are going to need to have some boundaries. No cockroaches. Not happening.
And I think mosquitoes. If we could wipe out mosquitoes, I think the world would be a better place.
Mosquitoes are one of the deadliest animals to humans.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah.
I think on behalf of all humans who have died from mosquito-borne illnesses, we should seriously consider how many other species need them and do the math on that. Because could we get rid of those fuckers?
My understanding is 50% of all humans in the history of humans have died from malaria, which is from mosquitoes.
That sounds right. That sounds like a fact I learned from Hank Green.
That it's literally half of all humans have died from malaria. It's just an incredible killer historically.
Yeah.
It's not as bad now.
And it's still killing a disproportionate amount of
yeah.
people every year. They kill more than everything. Aside from maybe waterborne illness, but it's truly, yeah. I even know an old hippie guy who made up a whole song about how all life is sacred except for mosquitoes. Which is yeah. I think maybe possibly humanity has had it with those fuckers.
So the animal version of viruses. Burn the fucking tent down.
Yes,
Burn
all
it
that
down.
to say, that when Ramonda's like, I could never deal with any of my possessions again because of all the bugs that were in them. Like, I get it. Like, I hate this bubble of evil. It is excellent writing because it makes my skin crawl.
Oh, this is a really, really good one. The bugs coming out through the bottom of the tent, the horror of the bump forming under the thing, and then one bump and then multiple bumps. Like, the visuals are so good. This is Sanderson writing at its peak. It's amazing how much he can go from just like terrible writing to just really good imagery. And like, there's a reason I read his books, right? Like, and it's scenes like this that are visceral and make me sit up at night terrified of bugs. It's really, really good.
Yeah, we're not just hating on Brandon Sanderson in general. We're hating on very specific things we don't like because, he has real writing talent.
Also, there's a little bit, like, we hear about the Watergate, which is the gate that Gawyn was looking for as his way to get in, his crack to get in that he was just talking about in the previous chapter, right? They mentioned the Watergate here,
yes,
right? Like,
yes, a crack in the stone, yes.
And that is then later how they get in to get Egwene out, which kind of ruins her plans.
Right, yeah, but this is important information for Swan, right? Swan's like, how could I not have known about that? I was the Amerlin, da-da-da-da-da. So, it factors into Gawyn and Swan both making bad decisions together. And also, it gives them a chance to realize that Egwene is very much not exaggerating about how bad things are in the tower. Like, Sheriam has been demoted. She has been, gaslit into believing she's not an Aes Sedai when she is. And that whole like, oh, Elida really is assuming authority she shouldn't have. We, as the wise ones, sitters, need to go in and like assert our collective authority and tell her that she needs to sit down and take a number.
And I think one of the reasons why we put these three chapters together is like this Sheriam thing kind of bookends the episode, right? It's sort of how we began it and it's how we're ending it.
It really does, yeah.
So I don't feel the need to talk about it in detail because we did at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
But then the bump jerked suddenly, pushing upward. The canvas floor split and a thick-bodied cockroach as wide as a fig scrambled through. Ramonda pulled back in revulsion. The roach skittered across the canvas, antennae twitching. Suan took off her shoe to swat at it. Really, Swan, taking off your shoe? Not a good idea.
I know. Ew. Just step on it if you're going to be gross.
The bottom of the tent bubbled up near the rip, and a second cockroach climbed through. Then a third. Then a wave of them, pouring through the split like too hot tea sprayed from a mouth.
Oh, God!
A black and brown carpet of scrambling, scratching, scurrying creatures pouring over one another in their hurry to get out. The women screeched in revulsion. He used revulsion twice there. Throwing black stools and chairs as they stood. Warders were in the room a moment later. Broad-shouldered Rorik bonded to Magla, and that copper-skinned stone of a man was blah, 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 blah. Yeah, here we go.
I love the image of the warders rushing in with swords and then being like, the swords are no use against insects.
Poke.
Right?
They're really not, yeah. I mean, I feel like you could, like, use the flat of the blade to crush a bunch of them at once, maybe. If you were just, like, using it like a kind of a big fly swatter.
Yeah, that seems really bad for the sword, though. That's probably how you get a broken sword. I mean, aside from the power wrought ones, obviously.
Right, obviously. Those would be like great crowbars, like just. I will have to. I talk about this comic every once in a while, but Sluggy Freelance, really old comic, but there's a magic sword in there that is like indestructible, and of course the main character is Goofy. To power it up, you have to kill someone innocent. Right? So most of the time it's not that powerful because you don't actually want to kill someone innocent to power it up. It's usually an accident. So he just uses it as an indestructible crowbar like all the time. And it's like just a running joke in the series that he's like, it's great, a crowbar. And then he finally bends it once and he's like, oh no.
That's funny. Something about this bubble of evil that I thought was interesting was that these are specifically roaches from Shara.
Yes. I do feel like Sanderson is doing his best to foreshadow the Sharans showing up in the last battle without showing us the Sharans showing up in the last battle. Say that 5 times fast.
Specifically the way they burst into the Aes Sedai camp and like fuck up Ramonda and Lelaine like directly. Like it's a very like, hey, so I'm gonna be doing this with something way worse than roaches later.
Yeah, no, it feels like very much foreshadowing that moment when the gateway opens and the Sharans come busting, pouring out, exploding. How did they say?
Like hot tea sprayed from a mouth. And it specifically fucks up the Romaine situation in both cases.
Right.
In this case, it's just Lelaine having her entire life go up in smoke. But, you know.
Later, it's her whole life going up in smoke.
Literally her going up in smoke.
Yeah, yep.
And then we have a really interesting question to close out the chapter. The tower needed to be whole, whatever it took. Would she be willing to bow before Elaida to make it happen? Would she put on an accepted dress again if it would bring unity for the last battle? She couldn't decide, and that disturbed her nearly as much as those scuttling roaches had. What do you think of that question?
No, because they haven't done it so far. Someone has to, at no point does anyone ever give in.
That's what I'm asking. Is like, should they be giving in to Elaida by any means necessary and accepting whatever punishment in order to bring unity?
No, of course not. Because then you've created a tower that's so ineffective, it might as well not be there and will probably work for the opponents, right? Like you have to be strong internally before you can, give yourself the oxygen mask first before you give it to the child, right? Like that level of, if you are not, take care of yourself emotionally before you get into a relationship. The relationship is not how you should be fixing yourself, right? All of these things are true. And I think, especially get your internal shit in order before you try and go out and fix the world. I think there's a lot of nonprofits that could learn that lesson.
And again, to return to the theme of these chapters, like, who has the authority that should be respected and who is assuming authority that needs to be disrespected? Like, this is the question. And like, again, to return to parallels to the Elaida is Trump situation, right? Like, should we all just capitulate and do whatever they want because they're in power now? Or should we stay in opposition because humanity and morality and the Constitution are still supposed to mean something? Right? Like, do you go along with the despot, or do you maintain that being the opposition is correct? Do you maintain that Egwene is the correct Amyrlin? Because this is what it is, right? It's a contest of wills for who everyone is going to look to for Amyrlin. Does it make sense to capitulate? Well, who are you capitulating to? Right? Like, I mean, which one of these women are you giving your allegiance to? This is what Gawyn is struggling with. This is what Romaine is struggling with. Well, not really, but like, this is what she's thinking about in this moment, is like, which one are we supposed to be doing this war for? Who deserves it? Whose authority? Who has assumed authority in a way that is healthy and productive for our society? Important question to be able to answer with honestly and in a way that you can stand behind and not just waffle on, Sheriam.
Fortunately, Tuon's just going to solve that problem by snatching Elaida right out of there.
I kind of don't like it because it's an easy out for the Aes Sedai.
It's such an easy out. Yeah. They are given so many questions and so many moral dilemmas, and they're just having one of the options snatched away from them and being told, well, that's not an option anymore. So now you just have to go with the other one. And everyone's like, oh, okay. Then I guess I don't have to make the decision.
Yeah. Unsatisfying.
So, yeah, it's not the greatest way to go about it. Yeah, no, I would have rather seen not comeuppance, but like the realization that they've really messed up, right? That like a moment when Elaida was surrounded by the hall and they turned their back on her.
Right. And then she goes to them and they refuse to acknowledge her. And the only people who will acknowledge her are like the gate guards who let her out and don't let her back in. And that's it. That's
right.
The end.
Right.
Or whatever. Yeah. To actually have Egwene and her duke it out in front of the people whose authority they need to be, or whose respect they need to be getting. And then have Elaida lose. Just straight up lose.
You know what I'd love to see? Elaida lose, get exiled. On her way out, traitors try and use the one power on Egwene to like harm her and have the defense of Egwene bounce back on her and like still her accidentally and her be like stilled by her own actions and then still exiled. Yeah, that would have been really satisfying.
Something like that would have been good, because then she would have been punished by her own actions in a way that didn't feel weird.
Right.
Because like Shan Chan is just such a weird thing to be like, yay, she got her comeuppance by being put into slavery. Ew. But like having her own misguided attempt to regain power bounce back on her and end her is like, okay, yeah, that's instant karma. Instant karma is okay. I could live with instant karma.
And that's how we feel about Grendel, right? Is like, oh, you tried to put someone under compulsion and it bounced back and fried your brain. Well, that's some instant karma right there, right?
Yeah, like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Right. So just do something like that with Elida. Because like we see, she can't control her emotions. And you know what? I would have loved to see her just pull too much power and still herself. Like, she gets so angry, she's losing. She's like, I'm going to fuck you up. I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to do that to you. And everyone's like, calm down. No, I'm going to pull it. She pulls in all this power and just basically stills herself on the spot.
Right. In an attempt to be like, if I can't have the throne, then you can't either.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then it doesn't work because Egwene just like throws up a shield and is like, sucks
and
to be
Egwene's
you.
so much more powerful. She just is like, yo, chill.
Yeah.
So Elida trying to match maybe like grab a Terran and trying to match Egwene. God, I would love to just rewrite these books. Love to rewrite these books if I was a talented writer, right? I mean, we've already talked about how we'd rewrite Matt, and Matt would have a tragic end. Now we're sort of talking about Elida. Like every character, I feel like we could create a different storyline and then weave them back together again.
We were never this disrespectful of Robert Jordan.
Never. Oh God, nothing. No, well, because I never could see the outline behind the writing with Robert Jordan. It just felt like the characters were doing what, and the world existed, and the characters were living in it. For me, what I can see with Sanderson, and maybe it's just I've been reading too long and rereading these things too much and picking them apart too much. But with Sanderson, I really feel like I can see the bullet point for behind every scene. And that makes it almost, I don't want to say boring, but like once you've picked out that bullet point, you don't really need to go that much deeper.
Yep. It's a very different experience. I didn't realize how different it was going to be.
Me neither. Yeah.
Because, on the one hand, I'm like, well, we're just weirdos who have hyper fixated on something so long that we don't know how to be normal about anything. But, like, no, we've switched authors and the entire feel of what we're doing has changed. Like, completely.
Agreed.
It's been a very surprising turn of events.
I feel like I had a little more idea of how big of a difference it was going to be because because of Mistborn spoilers, right? Like, because I've done that podcast, I kind of knew what podcasting Brandon Sanderson's content was going to be. What I wasn't sure is how much of Jordan's writing is in there, how much of the plot we're going to be able to like sort of, because I feel like we have those moments where we're like, oh yeah, this is actually feels Wheel of Timey, and we can talk about it. Like there's a couple of chapters we've done where I'm like, oh, that felt normal to me. That felt like old school Wheel of Time. But those have been a minority of the episodes.
Yeah.
So it feels more like Mistborn spoilers than it feels like Wheel of Time spoilers.
Yeah. And I only ever read Mistborn because I wanted to listen to you guys do the podcast, and I don't remember if I even listened to it. Like, the whole thing is just so unmemorable. It's like, I don't know. Weird.
I remember doing it, and I remember we did, instead of the last two books, we did Secret History, because Secret History is kind of, there was so little to talk about in those books that we wanted to talk about. We felt like Secret History as a background observer, because that's what that book is. It's Kelsier as a dead guy watching over what happens in the other two books. And we were like, oh, we can just do this short story and basically cover everything we want to talk about with these two books, instead of going into and doing another 60 episodes, 30 episodes per book, on these two more books. And so, yeah, no, I mean, it's different. It's different. It's just because I don't know how Jordan wove his threads so tight. His storylines were so detailed. They're fractal in a way. The deeper I look, the more I find.
Yeah, very much so.
You know? And so from a distance, Brandon Sanderson looks very similar, but the detail isn't there. It doesn't have that sort of same level of, it's still a blanket, but it's just a blanket of one color. Which, sorry, I know that's like, everyone's like, hey, we're here to hear you guys talk about these books, and I think we're just adjusting a little bit, and I want to get through this book too, because I feel like there's going to be the Sanderlanche. I feel like we're doing Hinderstap next week, which is super cool, and then we've got the Battle at the White Tower. We have Veins of Gold. Like, there's so much coming up that's so cool, and are some of my favorite moments from the series that I can't believe I don't want to talk about them more, right? Because they're really cool action scenes and really cool philosophy, and there's a lot of interesting stuff happening there. But yeah, you're right. The feel of these episodes has been different, and I haven't quite figured out why.
Yeah, well, halfway through this book, so we're a sixth of the way through this last stretch, and we're gonna do it. We're going to do it. However weird it gets, we're still doing it.
And I can't wait. I'm actually really curious about New Spring, too. I still think that would be a fun, just like live stream for 12 hours and see how, if it's really, really bad, we can throw it away and do it fresh. But
yeah, I think we should find an excuse to do a stupid long stream. Do New Spring for that. We've been promising that since before I was part of We. So,
I mean, it's not that I've been promising it. I just think it would be a cool way to do it, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun. Just binge podcast. It'd be kind of like binge listening, but binge making.
Yeah, binge making. I mean, I got so into that idea, I sat down and did my notes for the whole book at one point. Like, I was ready to do that. That was like just looking for a time to do it. And then COVID.
Still looking.
Yeah, still looking.
I have not been following any. I know that like half the YouTube channels and podcasts have gotten to do an interview with the cast or with Ray for the costume person or whoever. I'm staying away from all the hype. I don't want it. I'm happy to just experience the hype at fourth hand. Just be like, the warm glow in the distance is very nice, but I will be waiting until the 13th, like I was told to. I was told the 13th is when the things are going to happen. I do not want to be inundated with shit to engage with before then. I'm autistic expectations, right? You told me the 13th. Quit handing me shit I didn't ask for before the 13th.
Yep. Ah! No, people are writing reviews. Like Nate Bliss put out a review where he's like, well, I've seen all of season 3 and let me tell you what I think. And I'm like, come on. Like, I want my own opinion.
I don't want to know.
I don't want to know what your opinion is. Let me have my own opinion.
Exactly. I want my own opinion.
Not that I don't think Nate Bliss has great opinions and that, like, I don't trust him to have opinions, but like, I haven't even watched the 11-minute opener. No.
Yeah, me either. No, I don't want it. I feel like the whole thing is just pushing a weird hype cycle that I find very toxic and gross and culty. And I just, like, no. And yeah, I don't want other people's opinions. It's great that you have a spoiler-free review, but your opinions are themselves gonna spoil my experience. I literally just this last year finally watched all of Game of Thrones all the way through. I'd never finished it. And I have heard so much bitching and moaning about the last 2 seasons from you specifically, but from a lot of people. It wasn't that bad after all of the negative hype. I had years of being told they're absolutely awful, the worst thing that's ever been committed to television, like just hyperbole on hyperbole, byword for horrible TV. And I watched them. I'm like, I mean, they're mid, which is like really disappointing for a show that was genre defining. The last 2 seasons shouldn't be mid. That is grossly disappointing. But like, this is fine. I was told that it would be like cardboard cutouts with poop stains on them. And like, it's fine. It's Game of Thrones, whatever. It was such a weird experience.
Yeah, I think when the hype gets you so excited and then you get something mid, the difference is huge. When you're expecting mid and you get lower tier mid, or you're expecting mid and you get, that. And you're like, fine, that's what I was expecting. But I think because they'd set such high expectations on quality, and because the series is unfinished, and this was the ending, because this is the problem. People wanted an ending to the books. We still want an ending to the books, right? Like, we still want them to write the fucking ending of the books. And so this was going to be the greatest ending to the greatest series that had ever been written, right? And this was we were going to get this ending before the books came out, which was such a weird thing to happen, right? Whenever has a series, TV show, started before the books were finished written and been on air long enough to actually get beyond, like, most shows can't make it past book 1, right, of whatever series is written. It's much easier to get books published than it is to get shows made. So this weird inversion where the books haven't been written and the show went beyond it was this first time thing, and we were expecting, and everything leading up to that had been so good, that what you're doing is expecting the ending to the books. And you want it to be the same quality so you can enjoy the ending of the books. And it ruined the books for a lot of people because that's the ending they get.
And that makes sense. And that totally makes sense. And you can tell that that's why the last 2 seasons are mid, is because they really thought they could do better than the original author. Like, get out of here. Shut up.
Well, they just didn't have anything from the original author.
Go make him write then. Don't make up your own ending. That was dumb. Go just sit outside of his door in a tent and just refuse to leave until he finishes the damn book. Like, I think they had better things to spend their money on than fucking it up. But like, whatever, right? It was same thing with Winter Dragon. When Winter Dragon came out, I didn't see it initially, and I only heard about it once everyone was in a complete rage spiral about it. And when I watched it, I was like, well, this is like not as bad as I thought it would be, even though it is awful.
It was awful. Well,
it's just amazing what expectations can do to color your opinions.
It's clearly 5 minutes of footage expanded out to fill 30 minutes, right? The YouTube channel.
Names?
Dusty Wheel. They did a recut of it and added a few like voiceover, and it's really good, right? It's like 7 minutes or something like that, and it's a really good.
Yeah, no, it's really good. The Dusty cut of that is really dope. It's actually good. It's actually good. So,
the footage was there. It's just a business decision to expand that out to 30 minutes and then make nothing else beyond that. So so many of the complaints I have around how Wheel of Time has been held on TV show has to do with the business around TV shows these days, and very little to do with how the show's being made. Mostly to do with like the runtime, the hours, the cuts, the notes from the studio.
Yeah, no, I've been rewatching the show because that is how one approaches a new release of a Wheel of Time content. You re-consume the content that came before. That is the way. So I've been rewatching the show, and fuck, I hate the editing. The editing is the bad guy. The editing is amateurish. It is raw. It is bad. It needs to be redone. You can tell that they're using different shoots of the same thing and they're not cutting it at the same moment. People's arms aren't in the same position. Pieces of jewelry are on and off. Heads are in different positions. It is infuriating. And they cut out huge parts of plot that they filmed because the actors are acting like there's other content that's there, and like you can just see scalpel marks on the edge of every fucking cut, and it makes me so enraged because there is good fucking content there. They filmed enough content to make a good show, and the editing is why 90% of my complaints are purely could be fixed with editing. Have nothing to do with the original costumes, casting, writing, set design, music choice. None of that raw stuff was the problem. It is the way that it was fucking edited. And half of that has to be business. And I feel like a lot of it is that they must have gotten some really inexperienced people because it feels really fucking amateurish.
No, there's so many people out there who would be better. I mean, give Lauren the raw footage.
Oh my God,
and employ
please,
him for a couple of years. Right?
You know,
like,
they had him do a official summary.
Yes, yeah. I watched that. Or I watched his director's cut on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but let him recut it. Give him the footage and let him recut it. That's
God,
like that.
please.
That would be amazing. Someone who's a true fan, who's got true talent. Don't give it to me. Don't give it to a radio. We don't have the.
No, let us be part of the screeners that help him get out of his own head and refine it as part of that process.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. We can be part of the feedback process for sure.
Exactly. But like, yeah, give it to Lauren. Give it to Lauren.
Give it to Lauren.
Give it to Lauren. And don't give him a time limit, or give it like a 90-minute time limit or something. You know,
Right. No, or yeah, in terms of how much content he can put into it.
Yeah. We should just have Lauren do all of it. I'm sure he can handle that. He doesn't have like a real life or anything.
Honestly, like that should be his real life. Like he should be paid enough to like just do that. Like
it should be.
But he's a content creator, so he's just barely making it. Like the rest of us.
Content creation is not lucrative. Or it is lucrative for people who have a way better idea of what they're doing and actually have more behind the scenes assistance.
It's like playing the lotto. It's lucrative for a small minority of the people who do it, right? And there's some people who can make a little bit of money playing the lotto on a regular basis with scratch offs and stuff like that. But like,
it's not that bad statistically, but I know what you mean.
I don't know. There's a lot of people who are dumping money into it who never get anything back.
There's a lot of people who are actually making living careers on it.
That's true. It is. You're right. It is less unlikely.
The house does not always win with content creation.
No, that's true.
But vibes wise, I totally get what you're saying. Like
it's
you
a
have
pyramid.
to have so many things line up correctly and have luck on top of that. Like it's.
And then even then, I see people who have luck, talent, skill, followers, and are still not making a living wage on social media.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot out there in the attention economy. It's a real freaking crapshoot. Yes, Fuji. Oh my God, being an editor has definitely made it harder for me to watch or listen to anything. I can hear the tiniest fucking things. It's so wild. Just editor brain.
Like when they dub over something, I can often hear it before I can see it because I hear the change in audio.
I can hear in audiobooks when they had to retake lines on a different day.
All the time. So
obvious. It's so obvious.
So obvious. You're just like, wow, that's not even close to the original tone or volume, or you are clearly tired in that, well, because you've been recording for a while, and this one you're bright and chipper and talking much faster because it's a one line you're recording by itself as opposed to reading the whole paragraph. Like it's rough. Like I think when I had the one time we did an audiobook, I had Patrick reread usually 2 or 3 paragraphs when he made a mistake, because that was the only way to cut. Yeah, it was the only way to cut it in a way that sounded natural. And I didn't necessarily use the whole 2 or 3 paragraphs, but the part that I used had to be part of a couple of paragraphs. We put so much work into that thing. We should have had better microphones.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Learn. Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Please rate and review us on your podcast app, and consider supporting us on Patreon for ad-free episodes. What Spoilers is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.